Hi, I'm Mark Chin, Partner and Senior Vice President for Realty Executives, Arizona Territory. Welcome to Mark's Minutes Video Library. These videos are intended for the exclusive use of our agents. They are designed to be a brief overview of topics that we are frequently asked about. They are not intended to be a substitute for legal advice. If you have additional questions after viewing this or any other video, please feel free to contact our broker support team and they will be happy to help you. Thank you. Welcome back. Here we are for part 3 of the BINSR. We have a BINSR advisory that is for the use of the agents, really not to be shared with the buyers or sellers. It's mostly just assisting the agents in trying to understand a better use of the BINSR, what it should and should not be used for. So if you look at the sections under the do section, it states that do set expectations with your buyers and know that you can ask what you can ask for and what you can't. Do establish communication with the co-agent prior to submitting the BINSR. Do provide co-agent with all physical inspection reports upon receipt. Do use action words to specify exactly what is required, i.e. repair, replace, remove. Do include estimates if available for requested repairs, and do create and use attachment A for additional items. You don't want to use an addendum for additional items. There is actually a continuation of the BINSR that you can use for more space if you need it. And going back to the thing that you're supposed to do on this list, one of the things is that you want to make sure that you get copies of all inspection reports, whether you're on the buyer side or the seller side. The contract provides the seller for copies of all inspection reports, and it says in the contract that the buyer will provide the seller with all inspection reports upon receipt and at no cost. Sometimes agents will talk about their buyer not wanting to share the report. They feel like they paid for it, or they have gotten a previous report maybe, but the contract obligates the buyer to provide the seller copies of all reports, whether it's roofing, pest control, home inspection report, any other reports, again, upon receipt at no cost. And in the do not area, probably as important as the things that are to do, as equally important are things you don't want to do. You do not want to modify the contract price and terms on the BINSR. Again, you can't modify the contract with the BINSR. You must use an addendum. So if you get some kind of an agreement on the BINSR of, for example, a seller concession, after you've itemized the disapproved items, you're going to need to put that onto an addendum and have it fully executed by buyer and seller within the time frames of the BINSR and the inspection period. So be careful with your time frames. Again, the lenders don't like to see in lieu of repairs, so be careful using that phrase. Again, you can state your items is approved and then put or seller shall pay X amount of dollars towards buyer's closing costs at close of escrow. One exception to that is if it's a cash purchase and there's no lender involved, you can use in lieu of repairs all day long in the addendum. So again, if it's a cash purchase, that's the one time and only time you want to feel comfortable using in lieu of repairs on an addendum. You also don't want to be asking the seller to do additional inspections. The inspection period is for the buyer to do their inspections. It's not really appropriate for the buyer to say something like seller to have furnace inspected and repaired as needed. You want to make sure that the buyer does their inspection during their inspection period. Again, do not use the addenda for additional list of repairs. We have an additional document with the BINSR that you can use to continue any additional requested repairs. Very important on this advisory is it's at the bottom, you'll see it's a statute. Statute's fancy word for the word law. That's a handyman exemption. And effectively, it states that all work over $1,000 must be done by a licensed contractor. For example, if the buyer has 4, 5, or 6 items on the BINSR, and if those items collectively, including materials and labor, exceed $1,000, then they must be done by a licensed contractor. The statute also states that the handyman may do work under 1,000 as long as it is of a casual or minor nature. Example, if it's electrical work and the electrical service panel, even if it's under $1,000, it's not something that a handyman should be doing. If it requires a permit, must be done by a licensed contractor. A couple of things that come up a lot with the BINSR is, we hear, well, the seller owns the property, he can do the repairs themselves. And actually, that's not correct. The statute states that if an individual is improving real property with the intent to sell or lease, then this statute applies to them equally as well as anybody else. The other thing that comes up sometimes is where the buyer and seller they'll say, well, we agree that the work is to be done by a handyman. And again, if it exceeds $1,000, you cannot violate the statute. The old saying about two people cannot agree to break the law. So even if two people agree that a handyman will do $4,000 worth of work, that is a violation of the statute and is unenforceable. So these are all hopefully useful tips that you can use. And that's what they are, basically tips and guidelines for you as an agent to use in creating the BINSR and responding to the BINSR. So hopefully that helps you a little bit. Again, if you need additional assistance, please feel free to call any of our broker management staff.